completely by other particles. That which is obstructive cannot be permanent. The reason why Buddhas never say that permanent particles exist is because they do not perceive obstructive permanent things. Siddhamatrans, who refute the existence of particles by applying the reasoning of ultimate analysis but assert that consciousness is truly existent, should accept objects and consciousnesses as they are conventionally accepted, since exactly the same reasoning applies. Assertion of our own sectarians. Who do not understand uncompounded phenomena as merely nominal. Although it is true that Buddhas do not mention permanent particles, they say uncompounded phenomena are permanent. Thus there is substantially existent cessation, which is like a dam. If this were not so, it would be inappropriate to speak of the third noble truth.
Answer. True sources bind to cyclic existence, true sufferings are that which is bound, and true paths are the means which liberate one from sufferings and their sources. If liberation which is other than these were a functional phenomenon, it should facilitate an effect, but it does not produce any effect and not the slightest facilitation occurs. Thus it is inappropriate to call such a substantially existent cessation liberation. It contradicts what the teacher said, monks, these five are only names: pastime, future time, space, nirvana, and the person. One should therefore accept liberation as a mere term, a mere imputation, and not as substantially existent. The subduer said, that which is the complete abandonment, removal, and extinction of this suffering, the abandonment of all the aggregates, the end of worldly existence and separation from attachment, is cessation and nirvana. According to proponents of functional things as truly existent, this citation means the aggregates are entirely non-existent in the sphere of nirvana. Nor can there be a person imputed independence upon them, for neither the reliance nor reliant exist. Neither the aggregates nor the person are seen as a truly existent reliance which reaches nirvana through the ending of disturbing attitudes and rebirth. What truly existent nirvana reliant upon that is there? Not the slightest. Thus one should accept liberation, too, as a mere imputation. Samkhya assertion. According to us there is no flaw that nirvana is not liberation because of lacking a reliance. When an adept understands that the principle and person are different, the process of involvement in cyclic existence such as the Great One and so forth stops. When everything subsides into the latent state of the principle, the conscious person remains alone. Thus there is a liberated self.
Answer. It follows that it is illogical to accept the existence of a conscious person at the time of liberation when there is freedom from attachment to objects, because you assert that the intellect makes known to the person objects to which there is attraction. You also assert that it is the person's nature to be conscious and that this is permanent and immutable. What is the value of accepting the existence of consciousness during liberation? There is not the slightest value, because while accepting the conscious person as an experiencer of objects, the transformations which are experienced no longer exist, having subsided into a latent state. Question. What if the person remains without consciousness at liberation? Answer. It follows that to accept the existence of a liberated person without consciousness clearly amounts to accepting the person's non-existence, because of accepting that the person and consciousness are of one nature, being either equally existent or non-existent. Assertion. There is a self during liberation, for though there is no actual consciousness, the potential to be conscious of objects exists.
Answer. That too is illogical. If at liberation a self existed, there could be such a potential or seed of consciousness, but at that time there is no consciousness. Objection. If there is no liberated self, there is no liberation, and thus cyclic existence is indestructible. Many such unwanted entailments arise. Answer. It is irrelevant to speculate whether, because there is consciousness, people would or would not enter liberation, or whether, because its seed is truly existent, people would or would not enter worldly existence. It would be relevant if a self as reliance existed but there is no liberated self. It is certain that in the state of nirvana, people who have gained liberation from suffering by completely abandoning the contaminated aggregates through the total elimination of disturbing attitudes and emotions have no other causeless permanent self which does not depend on the aggregates. Therefore, people who aspire to become free should always affirm that the complete ending forever of conceptions of a self is good and should never assert the existence of such a useless liberated self.
Assertion: if during liberation there is no liberated self, and nirvana, which is termed the ultimate, is said to be the mere ending of conceptions of a self through the non-recurrence of that which is composite, what is the purpose of striving for such an ultimate? It is preferable for those interested in their own good to accept conventionalities like eyes, sprouts and so forth, but not to assert any ultimate. For ordinary people have some belief in virtuous and non-virtuous actions, their homes, forests, and so forth, but none whatsoever in the ultimate. This stanza was written in connection with the extensive refutation of the self in the following chapter. Since it is interpreted as a controversial contention in Candrakirti's commentary, it should not be accepted as our own contention. The summarizing stanza: this is the 9th chapter from the 400 on the Yogic Deeds, showing how to meditate on the refutation of permanent functional phenomena. This concludes the commentary on the 9th chapter, showing how to meditate on the refutation of permanent functional phenomena, from Essence of Good Explanations, explanation of the 400 on the Yogic Deeds of Bodhisattvas.